We've got a principal that needs to educate some kids and are here, so we're going to move up to 44 and 45 and take that item, if you don't mind.
Agenda item 44 and 45 need to be considered collectively. 44 is authorize an ordinance to, number 1, amend tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 7, Sports Arena TIF District project and reinvestment zone financing plans and grant program to include workforce training programs as an eligible TIF grant project, and number 2, make corresponding modifications to the Sports Arena TIF District's project and reinvestment zone financing plans and grant program consistent with the requirements and limitations of the Act. Agenda item 45 is authorize a TIF grant to Dallas Independent School District in an amount not to exceed $50,000 to fund the Workforce Ready program at LG Pinkston High School from increment accruing to tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 7, Sports Arena TIF District, West Dallas Subdistrict. I do need to read the following statement into the record. By making and seconding the motions, the council members represent that they have undertaken sufficient examination and involvement beyond reviewing the agenda materials to be knowledgeable about the facts and the circumstances of the cases and to be able to develop an opinion based on such an examination of the various factors and issues involved. Therefore, for adoption, the items will require 2 seconds, and this statement does apply to agenda items 41 through 47. We do have one registered speaker on agenda item number 45, and that is Deborah Moore. Ms. Moore? Ms. Moore, if you'll please come forward. You'll come up to the podium.
Sir, you guys just have a seat right there. Thank you.
You do have 3 minutes to speak. You'll notice the timer at the podium. Please stay to the topic and address your comments to Mayor Rawlings. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
I just wanted to say I am in agreement with the authorizing of the TIF grant to DISD.
Ma'am, your name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Deborah Moore. Do it start over? No.
Just your
Deborah
name
Moore.
and address?
3607 Pueblo Street,
Thank
Dallas 75212.
Thank you.
I am in agreement with the authorization of the TIF grant to DISD in the amount of $50,000 only if it is to be for sure directed to the Pinkston High School students toward the funds of a work-ready program for all the students that are of age to work. Now you say from increments accruing to tax increments financing reinvestment zone 7, Sports Arena TIF District, West Dallas Sub-District, not to exceed $50,000. My question is this the first time our schools have ever received this type of help for our public school students in West Dallas? Why not a minimum of $100,000 toward the program? In fact, why not consider on beyond that and go to the $2.5 million towards a Pinkston High School? This would encourage our students there. They've been asking for this for a long time. This would allow our children to have a place to play their games and at their home field. And they also have their middle school there and their Little League who plays for, which is representing by the city of Dallas. This would be financing a sports arena TIF district funds. I think it's a great idea to help these children that have been overlooked for so long. They have not been heard or had a voice where the city of Dallas or DISD have listened. This is a positive step for our children. It will be working toward building blocks toward a positive rapport with our residents in the city of Dallas. We need that right now. This is a step in the right direction, just as long as the path doesn't venture off track to what we understand this agenda item to be. Please make sure that our community is informed also about things like this, because oftentimes we are always left out of the loop and we never find out about anything until the last minute. In fact, I found out about this item number Friday, and I've been calling, trying to find out details about this item until I finally reached the secretary of our council persons, and she sent me a snippet of what this item agenda was about. So this was not really enough time to put it forth to all of our residents in West Dallas, but I was able to gather some of the neighborhood leaders and speak to some of the residents throughout from Loop 12 to Sylvan Avenue. So we are in agreement with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
That's your final speaker on the item, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, these guys want to speak, is that?
We don't have any other registered speakers.
Okay, just right. So hold on here. We'll take it up if we need to. Thank you. Entertain a motion, Mr. Callahan. Say it in the mic.
He's not on.
Oh, I got you.
Now we got it. I move approval on items 44 and 45 collectively.
2 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be 100% in favor of funding these items out of general fund money in the next year's budget, or even reprogramming some of the above budget revenue that we've received this year. These are good programs that should be funded from general fund money. The problem with these items is that they're being funded out of TIF dollars, and the basic deal that we make with taxpayers inside a TIF district when we ask them to sign up is that those monies will be deployed for infrastructure improvements, durable infrastructure improvements inside the TIF district using that money. TIFs are a useful tool because of political problems in cities. Because we are unable as a council to convince residents that we should increase their taxes, we use items like TIFs to redirect dollars that should go to the general fund into development opportunities in those districts. Now, if we were philosopher kings and if we were really excellent politicians, we would be able to sell our citizens on the idea that there is value in something like a workforce readiness program, or a system of culverts to prevent neighborhoods from flooding, or other things that we have attempted to use TIF dollars for. That's on us. We're not great at selling to people the idea that their tax dollars are actually getting them good value. And so they're hostile to us, talking about new taxes. And probably they're right to be, because they could probably point to waste, fraud, and abuse issues in the past that ruined their trust in us. But the basic deal for TIFs is that their development by using the money to invest in durable infrastructure that supports development inside the TIF district. And workforce readiness is a valuable program. It's absolutely something I will support, would support out of the current budget or a future budget, but it is completely inappropriate to fund out of TIF dollars. And that's because of that fiction that we have to sell to our citizens, because we're unwilling to budget in a transparent and honest manner. And so this is a real problem, Mr. Broadnax. I mean, this is something where you're stretching the rules of an established program for a program that I think the council would support if you just fund it in a transparent and honest way. And I got to tell you, this is not transparent or honest. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Arnold.
Excuse me. Just in the same vein, I became excited. I thought, my goodness, there's money that we can put to the public schools. Just a quick point, just listening to colleague Kingston, I do have some concerns, but this is what I would like to ask before I start talking and just giving my points. could I get someone to the mic who could tell me or could give me the list of all of the funding options that are available to our public schools? Is there anyone here could tell me that? Because the schools get confused sometimes. I've had advocates in the city who right now asking me to stand up and fight for SOC, and I'll do that. But if there are some pots of money or some grants or some other funding mechanisms, could you give that to me today? I've got to meet with my SOC group in about 24 hours. So other than this TIF, we'll take this if you're giving it away. So who's here with that information? Jesus, come on. Is this your idea? Did you come up with this idea of this profile for Pinkston? Which I'm not mad at Pinkston. I love my public schools. I want them to get what we can give them as a city, but I kind of want to know how this came about.
Well, this came about a year ago. The council approved an amendment to the TIF guidelines that said that it would be permissible for the TIFs to support educational initiatives.
Okay, could you stop right there? Could you give me a copy of that resolution that we voted on? Because I kind of don't remember that.
Sure.
Can we get that like in a few minutes?
I can get that to you.
Okay,
yes.
go on. So this particular council voted on that.
So
okay.
what that did was say that our TIF, our city guidelines for our TIFs allowed for this, and then each individual TIF, if they want to consider a program like this, needs to amend their own plan and finance plan. So that's what we did in this particular area.
Okay, what would be an example of an educational initiative that we could fund?
Well, this is the first example. This is the first time that we have put this into effect with a practical program, and we went to the DISD and said, we have the capacity to do this. Do you have a suggestion, or are there some things that we can work with you on? And they came up with this workforce readiness initiative.
All right. So are there other sources that I can use? Because I want my SOC Bear Cave representatives to come and talk with you about this, if you can give me the rest of the options.
I'm not
Is this
aware,
the only option?
I'm not aware of specific sources, Ms. Arnold. I suspect that we could use general fund money subject to council approval.
Okay. Could SOC qualify for the same program, South Oak Cliff? Just plug in SOC in the place of Pinkston.
We could do this anywhere where there was a TIF available to provide the finance.
So is SOC near a TIF that they can benefit from?
Well, the only other thing I can tell you is that we used public-private partnership money on a recent workforce funding initiative that you all voted on at the last meeting. But
could SOC's name be simply placed here? Just tell me one more time, because I want to make sure I'm listening.
It could be. It could be.
And do you know if we have a TIF? You don't know if we have a TIF, or you do know if we have a TIF that would serve the South Oak Cliff community?
Well, we don't have one right now that covers that area specifically.
But so that SOC would have to move toward public partnerships sources?
We'd have to look to other sources, yes.
All right. What about the new market tax credits?
It depends on what kind of program is participated. The new market tax credits, there are certain types of educational-related initiatives that might qualify, but we'd have to look at what the
Has any DISD schools received that while I'm on it, any new market tax credits?
It would depend on the individual
Has it,
initiative.
to your knowledge, have we given it to a public school, DISD?
We have not done that today.
All right, so let me wrap. Miss, you want to tell me something for the record? Because I'm going to tell this to my SOC group, share this with them so they'll know.
I just wanted to clarify that
okay.
that this initiative, this grant program, was tied to economic development and specifically workforce training. Mm-hmm. And the program was very specific to helping students that were not college-bound into career pathways that would benefit the area. So it's not just any school program. It has to be something that relates to economic development, specifically jobs.
Income development? What did you say?
No, economic development.
Economic development.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that sounds like South Oak Cliff might qualify in the southern sector. So with that being said, thank you also to Ms. Deborah for coming out today and demonstrating her desire to include the public. And this is another example of the lack of communication and information. But let me just go on the record as saying that what happens sometimes, council members and even those in the audience in the city, our constituents get confused because they keep coming to us asking that we as a council take certain positions. And I often tell them, look, you have to know jurisdictions. There are certain things that we can do as a city and some we cannot. But it seems that we have the capability to become stronger partners, not so much to dictate what happens. So where I stand now, I would like to be able to give South Oak Cliff and other schools, Roosevelt High School in particular, because I know they would qualify just like Pinkston when it comes to workforce and economic development, of which I'm a strong advocate. But I want to make sure that if you have that information, and we can come up with some scenarios that I can pass on to the group tomorrow when I meet with them, I would be happy to get those from you, especially economic development. Mr. Zavakovsky, Mr. Broadnax, if you can help us do that so we can empower that community so they can have equal access and they will understand that we here as partners and not so much to dictate what goes on inside that building. Thank you so much for the information. It's uplifting.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan.
Yeah, Mayor, Carl mentioned a whole lot of what I was going to say, but we took a couple of different actions, 2015, 2016. By rule, it is permissible. The idea behind this thing was it had an economic development component. We wanted to make sure that these folks coming out of Pinkston High School would have skill development so they'd make more money, and more money means a multiplier effect. They're in that zone, so it's not quite in the TIF, but it's close to that area, so a lot of those students might be able to go to work in that vicinity, and it does lift them up. So again, it is permissible. Maybe there's better ways to do it. I do think the new market tax credit, because that's really in essence free money there, we don't have to worry about it. That's a federal government program. Carl, is there a way maybe on the 380 grant state that could be used as well?
Well, I think as Barbara was reflecting, that we have tied it to, in this latest instance, to workforce type initiatives, so we're tying it to jobs, so it has an economic development tie.
Right.
Sometimes we have used we've used new markets a lot as it relates to facilities. We did it once with Cristo Rey in your district to help them with facilities. So it just depends on the individual proposal and how it can fit in the framework of these individual programs.
Right. But I don't think we're doing anything outside of the realm of acceptability, because we did make these changes, 1 and 2 years ago, and it should reflect that. The record should reflect that it's an okay thing. It's not an illegal function at all.
Yeah, state law gives us total flexibility, and we just changed our guidelines to give us a little more flexibility in this respect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kleiman.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be supporting this because I do support workforce development, but I do think that this really begs the issues: what are the TIFs supposed to be used for? And I firmly believe they should be used for infrastructure. The idea behind a TIF is we're borrowing money from a developer and then repaying them back over time. I have asked the city attorney's office to help me review that policy over my concerns about using TIF money to buy down rents, which I don't think is an appropriate use of TIF dollars as well. And I'm hoping to get some language from the city attorney to help us clarify that TIF money is strictly for public infrastructure. So I'll be supporting this, but we do need to give clarification to staff on how this money is to be used, and it's not just another fund from which to pull dollars out for things that should be in the general fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anything that can be beneficial, especially to as it relates to workforce, getting our young people an opportunity to be successful, to move into a career as opposed to a job, I'm always going to be in support of, as someone who taught in West Dallas at Thomas Edison, which feeds into Pinkston. I was really glad to see this when I talked with my colleague just yesterday, Mayor Pro Tem Alonzo, about it. I think the potential for this is unlimited. there's already a partnership, as we voted on just a couple of weeks ago, with Serve West Dallas. And what we're hoping we can do is be proactive, make sure students on the front end have these opportunities where we don't have to focus so much of our resources on the back end. Those who are out-of-school youth who graduated and didn't know what they were going to do once they graduated from high school, those individuals who have been out of school and may have made choices and decisions that were not most beneficial, who are formerly incarcerated. So I think this is an excellent opportunity to expose young people to a career opportunity, get them plugged in, and then also get them moving forward in a career. As it relates specifically to the TIF and the use of the TIF, I think we appoint people to serve on boards for a reason. I think their job is to vet things, and once they vetted them and they make their recommendations, especially when they come out with unanimous recommendations, I have a tendency to trust that, but also verify, but that they've done the hard work and the due diligence. I think the staff, I see your badge, so I assume you're DISD principal officer here, and for your leadership and being innovative, and hopefully the district will move forward tomorrow night with innovation. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Alonzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, I strongly ask for your support on these two items. This is not something that started yesterday or last week. It started over 2 years ago. We first had to vote on it in order for us to be able to have the ability to do this through the TIF, and this was there was a tight vote, but it passed, and that was the first step. The second step was that we needed to go to individual TIFs, and that is precisely what we did. And to the point about being transparent, it was very transparent and has been very transparent all along. For those that don't pay attention, it's kind of hard for it not to be transparent to them. But this started as a conversation with the community, and it was presented to the community and explained how it can be done. But like I said, it's steps that we needed to take, and that's exactly what we did. It was also presented to the community members or the community leaders in that neighborhood, which in turn not only talked to Pinkston, but also talked to the Dallas County Community College District. So that's been a conversation throughout, and like I said, it's been over 2 years. Like it was mentioned before, it is a pilot program. It is the first one in the district, if I'm not mistaken, and I want to applaud and I want to encourage all that really what it is a step in the right direction and giving back to the community. This is going to benefit the students of Pinkston High School, 75212 zip code particularly, and it's also a partnership with our other governmental entities as we talked. And I want to not only thank the leaders, and I don't want to give names specifically, but there were many, but also we have present Principal Simmons. Principal Simmons, thank you very much for coming. As Mayor, you said that he's got to get back to school because they're in the last week of school, well, actually week and a half of school, and we want to appreciate them. And also we conversed with Mr. Vega, who is also here, and Mr. Cordero. So I want to say thank you to all of you that not only work with the staff to be able to put this together at the request of the community. And so it is a step in the right direction. We strongly encourage. We've been talking and we've been asked to give back, and how we can be part of giving some TIF funds and what we generate ourselves when we participate. So we wanted to state that this is something that we're doing, and it is in particular TIF districts, and you have to take those steps accordingly. So I encourage, as it was mentioned for other areas, I encourage that we do that in other TIF districts. But again, it is a process, and this is a great step in moving forward. I don't know, Mr. Simmons or Mr. Vega or Mr. Cordero, if you all would like to say a few words, but I wanted to say thank you and look forward to this. And I know it's going to be successful for our students in Pinkston High School. And I appreciate everything that you all have done in partnering and working with us, and especially the community, and bringing this forward to our staff to put together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Arnold.
Yes, just quickly, I'm kind of appreciative of the fact that we're doing, I am appreciative, and in the words of Tupac, I ain't mad at you, because I want our schools to be able to access and our communities to be able to access all the resources and the benefits that they can get from this city, of which they pay tax dollars. However, just let me comment, I heard my council colleague talk about politics, and it's not geared toward you, but, you know, I'm kind of like, at this point, there's a hashtag called Stay Woke. Mr. Thomas, you mentioned something about, Councilman Thomas mentioned something about workforce and the, what was it, Edison schools and that community, and I began to go back to when I first arrived here, and we talked about the cement plant. Some voted to put a cement plant in this community, and we talk about workforce, so you're preparing them to work at the cement plant. So, you know, I'm kind of shaking my head. I think it's called SMH now, when we talk about our true commitment. And so is it political in the sense that it's timely, it's a timely conversation, or are we truly committed to that community? And I know there are ongoing concerns about the investment in West Dallas and the gentrification of West Dallas. So those are just topics I'm going to leave you all with, but I'm concerned about a community and concerned about a council that supports this workforce initiative, but at the same time we vote for a cement plant to go next to a school. So as moving forward, I am just extremely happy that we know we have the resources for our schools, but also back to Mr. Kleiman, Councilman Kleiman's point, are we using the TIFs the way we need to use them? But what I do want you also to know for the public and those of you around the horseshoe, we do what we want to do when we want to do it. And we use the monies for what we want to use it for when we choose to use it. And so this is probably one of those uncomfortable situations where we're using monies for, that's kind of uncomfortable, but I'm reading the data, and it talks about certain qualifications, low housing values, low income population. So that does fit other schools. Roosevelt High School and South Oak Cliff communities would pretty much meet the criteria. So if we're going to use TIF, here's a pilot program. I'm going to encourage my communities to push for equity so they too can benefit from this, so we can all grow together in Dallas. I know we're growing kind of slow in the South, but I think if we get our hands on enough of those resources, we can grow much faster. So thank you so very much, Mr. Zawakowski, for bringing this to our attention. Thank you, all of you who are going to support it today. But I'm happy. Thank you. They're happy to know that. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Alonso.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask for a record vote, please?
Thank you, Ms. Hold on, before we take a vote, Mr. Broad next.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have appreciated the dialogue, and I think some of the questions and concerns, particularly around this item and the utilization of the funding. And I think I want to go back to Councilman Kingston's point, which I think was a great point about transparency and the utilization of the funds. And I can appreciate that as we begin our process of reviewing the entirety of the TIF guidelines to ensure, I think to many people's point, so that we are using the dollars for their intended purposes and that there is equity in how we go about funding projects and approving certain items within TIF agreements and in TIF areas. And so I'm looking forward to that and look forward to council's support on experiencing a truly transparent process, as well as the outcomes of what that really means as we realign all of our economic development tools to ensure that every part of this community gets access to them, and that we can find ways to build and do more TIFs that actually speak to the issues that we want to resolve inside specific communities and not be so developer driven in the first place. So lastly, as it relates to amending and authorizing these particular types of utilization of funds for TIF, I just wanted to at least share so the council can go and the community can go and look that the item, as I think Councilman Callahan referred to, had been previously approved by council to amend our guidelines to support specific funding for education and training programs to benefit districts and adjacent neighborhoods was approved by council on June 17, 2015. Not quite sure about how the vote was, as we call for a record vote here, but I do want to say that staff was in compliance and performing, I think, in a manner consistent with previous council approval, but I look forward to amending those rules if, in fact, council sees so fit. But I did want to make sure that people know and the council understands that as I am new, I appreciate history, but have made a committed goal and effort to continually be transparent with the community and this council, and I'll continue that. But we look forward to the conversation at whatever committee and the future council meeting to ensure that the council as well as the public knows what the new rules might be going forward for the administration and implementation of future TIFs. Thank you.
Thank you. A record vote.
One moment. Please cast your vote. All have voted. Voting in favor, Council Members Medrano, McGue, Arnold, Thomas, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, Council Members Gates, Kleiman, Clayton, Mayor Rawlings, Mayor Pro Tem Alonso, Council Members Callahan, Grayson, and Young. Voting no, Council Members Kingston and Griggs. The motion carries, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do at Pinkston, by the way. Okay, very important.